Lady Helena Marlowe had sworn to herself that she would never love the arrogant duke who had claimed her hand through duty rather than desire. She would be his wife in name only, her heart forever locked away from the man who had stolen her freedom. But when she saw another woman's fingers trail across his arm at the Pemberton ball, something savage and unexpected tore through her chest, and Helena realized with devastating clarity that hatred and love were separated by the thinnest of lines. The morning of her wedding dawned grey and cheerless, as if even the English sky mourned Lady Helena Marlowe's lost freedom. Standing before the tall windows of her childhood bedroom at Marlowe Manor, she watched the carriages arrive for what society would celebrate as the match of the season, the union between the Duke of Whitford and the Earl of Marlowe's eldest daughter. Helena saw it differently. To her, this was nothing less than the end of her independence, the sacrifice of her dreams on the altar of her family's financial difficulties and social ambitions. At 23, Lady Helena Marlowe possessed a beauty that had made her one of London's most sought-after debutantes. Her hair was the colour of spun gold, falling in elegant waves that caught the light like precious metal. Her eyes were a striking shade of emerald green, framed by dark lashes that made them appear even more vivid. Her figure was graceful and perfectly proportioned, and her bearing spoke of generations of aristocratic breeding. But it was not her beauty that had attracted the Duke of Whitford's offer. It was her dowry, her family's connections, and the political advantages such an alliance would bring. Helena understood this with painful clarity, and the knowledge had hardened her heart against the man she was about to marry. "My lady," came the gentle voice of her maid Sarah, "it's time to dress for the ceremony." Helena turned from the window, her expression carefully composed, despite the turmoil in her heart. "Very well, Sarah. Let us prepare for my execution." "Oh, my lady," Sarah said with distress, "surely it won't be so terrible. The Duke is said to be very handsome, and certainly he's wealthy and powerful, and completely indifferent to me as a person." Helena interrupted. "This marriage is a business arrangement, nothing more. I harbor no illusions about romance or affection." As Sarah helped her into the elaborate wedding gown of ivory silk and French lace that had cost more than most families saw in a year, Helena reflected on the circumstances that had led to this moment. Her father, the Earl of Marlowe, had made a series of poor investments that had left the family estate heavily mortgaged. The Duke of Whitford's offer had been a lifeline, a generous settlement that would clear the debts and restore the family's financial security. Helena had been given no choice in the matter. When she had attempted to refuse, her father had made it clear that the welfare of the entire family, including her younger siblings, depended on this marriage. She could be selfish and condemn them all to ruin, or she could do her duty and secure their future. Duty had won, but at the cost of every dream Helena had harbored about love and marriage. "You look beautiful, my lady," Sarah said softly, as she arranged the final folds of the wedding veil. "Like an angel." Helena looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger, a perfectly dressed doll being prepared for display. "An angel in chains," she murmured. The ceremony was held at St. George's, Hanover Square, with all the pomp and circumstance befitting the marriage of a duke. Helena moved through the proceedings as if in a dream, speaking her vows in a clear, steady voice that betrayed none of the rebellion burning in her heart. When she finally looked directly at her bridegroom, she was struck anew by his imposing presence. Duke Sebastian Whitford was 31 years old, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair and penetrating blue eyes that seemed to see everything. His features were aristocratic and commanding, his bearing that of a man accustomed to absolute authority. He was, Helena had to admit, devastatingly handsome in a cold, remote way. But it was that very coldness that confirmed her worst fears. As he spoke, his voice was steady and formal, his expression giving away nothing of his thoughts or feelings. He was fulfilling an obligation, nothing more. When the ceremony concluded and they were pronounced husband and wife, Sebastian lifted her veil and kissed her with perfect propriety, a brief, chaste contact that spoke of duty rather than desire. Helena felt nothing but a chill that seemed to settle deep in her bones. The wedding breakfast was an elaborate affair, with hundreds of guests celebrating the union of two of England's most prominent families. Helena smiled and accepted congratulations with grace, playing her part perfectly while feeling as though she were watching the proceedings from a great distance. "You've done well, my dear," her father said quietly, as he led her in the traditional first dance. "The Duke is a good match, better than we had any right to hope for." "I'm glad you're satisfied, Papa," Helena replied, her voice carefully neutral. "You'll be happy, Helena," he said, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. "The Duke is an honorable man. He'll treat you well." Helena said nothing, but she wondered if her father truly believed that a loveless marriage could ever lead to happiness, or if he was simply trying to ease his own guilt over forcing her into this arrangement. When the time came to depart for the Duke's principal seat, Whitford Castle in Derbyshire, Helena felt as though she were leaving her old life forever. As their carriage pulled away from Marlow Manor, she watched her childhood home disappear into the distance and wondered if she would ever feel truly at home anywhere again. The journey to Derbyshire took 2 days, during which Helena and Sebastian maintained a polite but distant conversation. He was courteous and considerate, ensuring her comfort at every stop, but there was no warmth in his manner, no attempt to bridge the gap between them. "I trust you'll find Whitford Castle to your liking," he said, as their carriage approached the imposing structure that was to be her new home. "If there are any changes you wish to make to your apartments, you have only to speak with the housekeeper." "Thank you, Your Grace," Helena replied formally. "I'm sure everything will be satisfactory." "Sebastian," he corrected. "We are married now. There's no need for such formality between us." "Very well, Sebastian," she said, though his name felt strange on her lips. Whitford Castle was magnificent, a sprawling medieval structure that had been extensively renovated and modernized while retaining its historic grandeur. Helena's apartments were luxuriously appointed, with every comfort and convenience she could desire. But as she stood in the elegant sitting room that was now hers, she felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. "I hope you'll be comfortable here," Sebastian said, standing in the doorway with his hands clasped behind his back. "Dinner is served at 8. I'll have Mrs. Hartwell, the housekeeper, attend you tomorrow to discuss the household arrangements." "Thank you," Helena said, not turning from her contemplation of the view from her windows. "Helena," Sebastian said, and something in his tone made her look at him. "I know this marriage is not what either of us would have chosen under different circumstances, but we are bound together now, and I hope we can make the best of our situation." "Of course," Helena replied coolly. "I understand my duties as your wife." Something flickered in Sebastian's eyes, disappointment perhaps, or frustration, but his expression remained controlled. "I'll leave you to settle in," he said, and withdrew. That night, Helena dined alone in her sitting room, having sent word that she was too tired from the journey to join Sebastian in the main dining room. It was a small act of rebellion, but it made her feel slightly less powerless. The Cold War. Over the following weeks, Helena and Sebastian established a routine of polite coexistence that felt more like an elaborate dance than a marriage. They breakfasted together each morning, exchanging pleasantries about the weather and local news before going their separate ways for the remainder of the day. Sebastian spent his time managing his vast estates and business interests, while Helena explored her new home and attempted to find some purpose in her dramatically changed circumstances. The castle staff was efficient and respectful, treating her with the deference due to a duchess. Mrs. Hartwell, the housekeeper, was a capable woman in her 50s who had served the Whitford family for decades. She was eager to please the new duchess and seemed genuinely puzzled by Helena's lack of interest in making changes to the household arrangements. "Is there nothing you would like to alter, Your Grace?" Mrs. Hartwell asked during one of their weekly meetings. "Perhaps the menus, or the flower arrangements, or the schedule for entertaining? Everything seems to be running smoothly as it is," Helena replied. "I see no need for changes." What she didn't say was that making changes would feel like accepting her situation, like acknowledging that this was truly her home now. She wasn't ready for that level of surrender. Helena spent much of her time in the castle's extensive library, losing herself in books and trying to ignore the emptiness that seemed to follow her everywhere. She wrote long letters to her sisters, carefully editing out any hint of her unhappiness, and took solitary walks in the castle's beautiful gardens. The gardens at Whitford Castle were truly spectacular, covering several acres and featuring everything from formal parterres to wild woodland walks. There were rose gardens and herb gardens, ornamental ponds and ancient oak trees, carefully maintained lawns and hidden grottos. Helena found solace in these outdoor spaces, where she could walk for hours without encountering another soul. It was during one of these walks that she encountered Sebastian unexpectedly. She had been sitting on a bench beside an ornamental pond, reading a volume of poetry, when his voice startled her. "I didn't expect to find you here," he said, approaching from the direction of the stables. He was dressed for riding, his dark hair slightly disheveled by the wind, and Helena was struck again by his commanding presence. "I enjoy the gardens," she said, closing her book and preparing to leave. "They're very beautiful." "Please don't let me disturb you," Sebastian said quickly. "I was simply returning from inspecting the tenant farms. The gardens are yours to enjoy as much as mine." Helena remained seated, though she felt awkward and uncertain. This was the longest conversation they had shared since their wedding day. "How do you find the tenants?" she asked, making an effort at polite interest. "Generally prosperous and content," Sebastian replied, moving to stand near the pond's edge. "Though there are always concerns, repairs needed, improvements to be made, a landowner's responsibilities are never finished." "You take your duties seriously," Helena observed. "I do," Sebastian said, glancing at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I believe that privilege comes with responsibility. Those who depend on me deserve my best efforts on their behalf." There was something in his tone that made Helena look at him more closely. For the first time, she glimpsed the man behind the ducal facade, someone who genuinely cared about the welfare of those under his protection. "That's admirable," she said, meaning it. "Is it so surprising?" Sebastian asked, and Helena detected a note of hurt beneath his formal manner. "No, of course not," Helena said, realizing that her surprise had been evident. "I simply hadn't given much thought to your responsibilities beyond the estate itself. There are over 2,000 people who depend on the Whitford estates for their livelihoods," Sebastian said quietly. "Their welfare is not something I take lightly." Helena felt a flush of shame at her own self-absorption. In her focus on her own unhappiness, she had given no thought to the broader implications of Sebastian's position or to the possibility that he might be a man of genuine principle rather than merely privilege. "I apologize," she said. "I didn't mean to imply that you were negligent in your duties." "No apology necessary," Sebastian said, though his tone remained distant. "I should return to the house. Please, enjoy the remainder of your afternoon." As he walked away, Helena found herself watching his retreating figure with new eyes. Perhaps there was more to her husband than she had allowed herself to see. But even if that were true, it didn't change the fundamental nature of their marriage, a union of convenience that neither of them had truly wanted. The weeks passed into months, and Helena gradually settled into the rhythm of life at Whitford Castle. She took on some of the traditional duties of a duchess, visiting the sick among the tenants, organizing charitable activities, overseeing certain household functions, but she approached these tasks with dutiful efficiency rather than enthusiasm. Sebastian remained courteous but distant, treating her with the respect due to his wife, but showing no signs of deeper feeling. They maintained their routine of polite interaction, but Helena sometimes caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't interpret, something that might have been longing, or perhaps merely puzzlement at her continued coolness toward him. During the long winter evenings, they often found themselves in the same rooms, the library, the drawing room, the music room, but they maintained a careful distance, like two planets orbiting in the same solar system but never touching. Helena would read while Sebastian attended to correspondence, or she would play the pianoforte while he worked on estate business, but they rarely spoke beyond the most basic courtesies. It was a civilized arrangement, but it was also profoundly lonely. Helena found herself wondering what Sebastian thought about during their silent evenings together, whether he was content with their distant marriage, or if he too felt the weight of all the words left unspoken between them. The castle itself seemed to reflect the emotional distance between its master and mistress. Despite its grandeur and beauty, there was a coldness to the atmosphere, as if the very walls were waiting for something to change. The servants went about their duties with quiet efficiency, but Helena sensed their puzzlement at the formal relationship between the Duke and Duchess. One particularly cold evening in February, as snow fell softly outside the library windows, Helena was reading when she became aware that Sebastian was watching her. She looked up to find his blue eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Is something wrong?" she asked, closing her book. "I was wondering," Sebastian said carefully, "if you're happy here." The question caught Helena off guard. It was the most personal thing he had asked her since their wedding day. "I'm content," she said, which was not entirely a lie, but far from the whole truth. "Content," Sebastian repeated, as if testing the word. "That's not quite the same as happy, is it?" Helena felt a flutter of panic. Was he dissatisfied with their arrangement? Was he planning to change the terms of their careful coexistence? I have everything I could reasonably want, she said carefully. A beautiful home, every comfort, respectful treatment. What more could I ask for? Love, Sebastian said quietly. Companionship, a true partnership rather than a polite arrangement. Helena's heart began to race. I thought we had agreed that this marriage would be a practical matter, she said. We never agreed to anything, Sebastian pointed out. We simply fell into a pattern of mutual avoidance. But I find myself wondering if it has to remain that way. What are you suggesting? Helena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. I'm suggesting that we might try to be friends, Sebastian said. That we might attempt to build something more meaningful than what we have now. Helena stared at him, torn between hope and fear. Part of her longed for exactly what he was offering, a real relationship with her husband, an end to the loneliness that had become her constant companion. But another part of her was terrified of making herself vulnerable to a man who had the power to hurt her so deeply. I need to think about it, she said finally. Of course, Sebastian said, though she thought she saw disappointment flicker across his features. Take all the time you need. But as Helena lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling of her elegant bedroom, she found herself thinking not about Sebastian's proposal, but about the way he had looked at her when he made it, as if her answer mattered to him more than he was willing to admit. The first thaw. The change began slowly, almost imperceptibly. Helena started joining Sebastian for dinner in the main dining room, rather than taking her meals in her sitting room. Their conversations gradually expanded beyond discussions of the weather to include books, current events, and observations about estate life. Helena discovered that Sebastian was remarkably well-read and possessed a dry wit that often made her laugh despite herself. He, in turn, seemed genuinely interested in her opinions and encouraged her to share her thoughts on everything from literature to politics to social reform. I've been reading about the conditions in the industrial cities, Helena said one evening over dinner. The reports are quite disturbing. Children working in factories, families living in terrible squalor. It's a complex problem, Sebastian agreed. The Industrial Revolution has brought prosperity to many, but the costs have been borne disproportionately by the working classes. Surely something could be done, Helena said passionately. Better housing, schools for the children, regulations to protect workers. You sound like a reformer, Sebastian said, but his tone was admiring rather than critical. Perhaps I am, Helena said, surprised by her own vehemence. Is that so shocking? Not shocking at all, Sebastian said. Admirable, rather. Too many people of our class prefer to ignore such problems rather than confront them. It was conversations like this that began to chip away at Helena's carefully constructed walls. Sebastian was not the cold, indifferent aristocrat she had imagined him to be. He was thoughtful, principled, and genuinely concerned about the welfare of others. As winter gave way to spring, their relationship continued to evolve. Sebastian began inviting Helena to accompany him on his rounds of the estate, showing her the improvements he was making to tenant housing and the new agricultural techniques he was implementing. Helena found herself genuinely interested in these projects and began offering suggestions of her own. The school in the village could use new books, she mentioned during one of their rides. And perhaps a small library for the families who can read. Excellent idea, Sebastian said immediately. Would you be willing to oversee such a project? You would trust me with that responsibility, Helena asked, surprised. Of course, Sebastian said, looking equally surprised by her question. You're my wife, my partner in all things. Why wouldn't I trust your judgment? The word partner sent a warm flutter through Helena's chest. It was the first time Sebastian had described their relationship in such terms, and she found she liked it very much. As they worked together on various estate projects, Helena began to see Sebastian in an entirely new light. He was patient with difficult tenants, generous with those in need, and always willing to listen to different perspectives. He treated her as an equal, valuing her opinions and encouraging her initiatives. More importantly, she began to notice the small kindnesses he showed her, the way he always ensured she was comfortable during their rides, how he remembered her preferences for tea and flowers, the genuine interest he showed in her letters from home. These gestures were so subtle that she might have missed them if she hadn't been paying attention, but once she started noticing them, she saw them everywhere. The estate itself was vast and varied, encompassing not only the castle and its immediate grounds, but also several villages, numerous farms, and thousands of acres of productive land. Helena was amazed by the complexity of managing such an enterprise and impressed by Sebastian's knowledge and dedication. I had no idea how much was involved in running an estate like this, she confessed during one of their rides through the tenant farms. The responsibility must be enormous. It is, Sebastian agreed, but it's also deeply satisfying. These families have lived on Whitford land for generations. Their prosperity is tied to mine and mine to theirs. It's a partnership that goes far beyond mere business. Helena could see the truth of this in the way the tenants greeted Sebastian, with respect, certainly, but also with genuine warmth and affection. He knew their names, their families, their concerns. He was not a distant landlord, but a true leader of his community. You care about them, Helena observed. They're my people, Sebastian said simply. Their welfare is my responsibility, and my privilege. It was moments like this that made Helena realize how completely she had misjudged her husband. The man she had thought cold and calculating was actually deeply committed to the welfare of others. The marriage she had seen as purely mercenary was, for him, part of a larger vision of family and community responsibility. One evening in early April, as they sat together in the library after dinner, a new tradition they had established, Helena found herself studying Sebastian's profile as he read. The lamplight caught the strong line of his jaw and the dark waves of his hair, and she was struck by an almost overwhelming awareness of his physical presence. When had she started finding him attractive? When had his nearness begun to affect her pulse and make her skin feel warm? She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but she was forced to acknowledge that somewhere in their gradual friendship, her feelings had begun to change. You're staring, Sebastian said without looking up from his book, though she could see the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I'm thinking, Helena corrected, though she didn't look away. About what? Sebastian asked, setting down his book and turning to face her. About how wrong I was about you, Helena said honestly. When we married, I thought you were cold and indifferent, but you're not, are you? Sebastian was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes searching her face. I was trying to be, he said finally. I thought it would be easier for both of us if I kept my distance. Easier how? Helena asked. Easier than wanting something I couldn't have, Sebastian said quietly. Helena's heart began to race. What did you want? You, Sebastian said simply. Your affection, your trust, your companionship. A real marriage instead of a polite arrangement. Sebastian, Helena began, but she wasn't sure what to say. The admission had shifted something fundamental between them, and she felt as though she was standing on the edge of a precipice. I'm sorry, Sebastian said quickly, misinterpreting her hesitation. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I know our arrangement suits you as it is. No, Helena said, reaching out to touch his hand before she could stop herself. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm just surprised. Surprised? Sebastian asked. I thought you were content with our friendship, Helena said. I didn't realize you wanted more. I've wanted more since our wedding day, Sebastian admitted. But I was trying to respect your wishes, to give you the space you seemed to need. Helena stared at him, her mind reeling. All this time, while she had been building walls to protect herself from a man she thought didn't care, he had been carefully maintaining distance to avoid pressuring her into something she didn't want. I think, Helena said slowly, that we've both been making assumptions about what the other person wanted. Perhaps we have, Sebastian agreed. What do you want, Helena? Not what you think you should want, or what would be practical, but what you actually want. It was a dangerous question, one that required her to be honest about feelings she was only beginning to understand herself. I want to try, she said finally. I want to see what we could be together if we stopped being so careful with each other. The smile that spread across Sebastian's face was like sunrise after a long night. I would like that very much, he said. The season of discovery. What followed was a period of courtship unlike anything Helena had ever experienced. Sebastian wooed his own wife with a patience and tenderness that took her breath away. He brought her flowers from the garden, shared his favorite books with her, and listened with genuine interest to her thoughts and dreams. They began taking long walks together in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Sebastian told her stories about his childhood, his travels, his hopes for the future. Helena found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her fears about their marriage, her dreams of making a difference in the world, her growing feelings for him. I used to think love was a luxury I couldn't afford, Helena confessed one evening, as they sat beside the ornamental pond where they had first begun to truly talk. I thought it was something that happened to other people, in novels and fairy tales. And now? Sebastian asked, taking her hand in his. now I think I was afraid of it, Helena said. Afraid of being vulnerable, of caring too much about someone who might not care about me in return. And are you still afraid? Sebastian asked gently. Helena looked at him. This man who had been so patient with her walls, so understanding of her fears, so generous with his own heart, and felt the last of her defenses crumble. Terrified, she admitted, but not enough to stop. Sebastian lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her palm. I love you, Helena, he said quietly. I've loved you for months, and I'll love you for the rest of my life. You never have to be afraid of that changing. Helena felt tears prick at her eyes. I love you too, she whispered, the words feeling like a prayer and a promise all at once. Their first kiss as a couple truly in love was everything their wedding kiss had not been, tender and passionate, full of months of suppressed longing and newfound hope. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard, and Helena could see her own amazement reflected in Sebastian's eyes. I can't believe how long we wasted, Helena said, resting her forehead against his. Not wasted, Sebastian corrected. We needed that time to become the people who could love each other properly. If we had rushed into this, we might have missed what we have now. Helena considered this and realized he was right. The friendship they had built, the trust they had established, the understanding they had developed, all of it formed the foundation for a love that was deeper and stronger than anything based on mere attraction could have been. As spring turned to summer, their relationship continued to deepen and flourish. They were no longer two strangers sharing a house, but true partners in every sense of the word. Helena took on more responsibilities in managing the estate and charitable works, while Sebastian included her in all his major decisions and sought her counsel on matters both personal and professional. Their physical relationship evolved as well, with a passion that surprised them both. Helena discovered that Sebastian was as generous and attentive a lover as he was a husband, and their intimacy became another source of connection and joy between them. I never knew it could be like this, Helena confessed one morning, as they lay entwined in the large bed that had become truly theirs. I thought physical intimacy was something women endured rather than enjoyed. With the right person, it's one of life's greatest pleasures, Sebastian said, pressing a kiss to her temple. I'm honored to be that person for you. As I am for you, Helena replied, marveling at how completely her understanding of marriage and love had been transformed, but their happiness was not without its challenges. As summer progressed, they received increasing pressure from Sebastian's family and social circle to make appearances in London society. The Duke and Duchess of Whitford were expected to participate in the social season, to host entertainments, and to maintain their position in the aristocratic hierarchy. We can't avoid London forever, Sebastian said one evening as they discussed yet another invitation. As much as I would prefer to stay here with you, we have obligations to fulfill. I know, Helena said, though the thought of facing society as Sebastian's wife filled her with anxiety. I just worry that people will see through us, that they'll know our marriage didn't begin as a love match. But it is a love match now, Sebastian pointed out. That's all that matters. Is it though? Helena asked. Won't people be watching for signs of discord, waiting for confirmation that our marriage is what they assumed it was, a cold arrangement between strangers? Then we'll prove them wrong, Sebastian said firmly. We'll show them what we've become, not what we started as. Helena drew comfort from his confidence, but she couldn't shake her nervousness about their upcoming return to London. The social world they would be entering was one where every gesture was scrutinized, every interaction analyzed for hidden meaning. She had learned to be happy as Sebastian's wife in the privacy of their estate, but could she maintain that happiness under the harsh glare of public attention? What if I embarrass you? She asked quietly. What if I say the wrong thing, or people can tell that we're not? Helena, Sebastian said, taking her face in his hands, you could never embarrass me. You're intelligent, beautiful, kind, and strong. You're everything a duchess should be, and more importantly, you're the woman I love. That's all anyone needs to know. His faith in her was both touching and terrifying. Helena had spent so many months protecting herself from vulnerability that the thought of being exposed to public scrutiny felt overwhelming. I'm not sure I know how to be a duchess in love, she admitted. I've spent so long pretending to be indifferent to you that I'm not sure I know how to behave otherwise. Be yourself, Sebastian advised. The woman I fell in love with. That's all you need to be. As they prepared for their departure to London, Helena found herself both excited and terrified by the prospect. This would be the first time they appeared in society as a genuinely happy couple, and she wasn't sure she was ready for the scrutiny that would entail. But she was determined to try. For Sebastian, for their marriage, and for herself, she would face whatever challenges London society might present. After all, they had already overcome the greatest obstacle of all, their own fears and misconceptions about each other. The London season. Their arrival in London in July was met with considerable interest from society. The Duke and Duchess of Whitford had been largely absent from the social scene since their marriage, leading to much speculation about the state of their union. Some whispered that they were so happy they preferred the privacy of their estate, while others suggested that they couldn't bear to be in public together. Helena was acutely aware of the attention as they settled into their elegant townhouse in Mayfair. Every servant, every tradesman, every caller seemed to be watching for clues about their relationship. She found herself second-guessing every interaction with Sebastian, wondering if their newfound intimacy was obvious to observers. "You're overthinking this," Sebastian said gently as they prepared for their first major social engagement, a dinner party hosted by the Marquis of Pemberton. "Just be natural. Let people see what we really are." "And what are we exactly?" Helena asked, adjusting her emerald necklace nervously. "We're two people who found love in an unexpected place," Sebastian said, moving to stand behind her at the mirror. "Two people who chose each other, despite everything that might have kept us apart." Helena met his eyes in the mirror and felt some of her anxiety ease. He was right. They had nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed of. Their love was real, even if it had taken time to develop. The Pemberton dinner party was an elegant affair, with 30 guests representing some of the most influential families in England. Helena found herself seated between Lord Pemberton and Sir Charles Worthington, both of whom seemed determined to draw her into conversation about her marriage. "You look radiant, Your Grace," Lord Pemberton observed. "Marriage clearly agrees with you." "Thank you, my lord," Helena replied with genuine warmth. "I'm very happy." "And the Duke?" Sir Charles inquired, with the barely concealed curiosity that seemed to characterize all social interactions. "He seems quite devoted to you." Helena glanced down the table to where Sebastian was engaged in animated conversation with several other gentlemen, and felt her heart swell with affection. "We're very devoted to each other," she said simply. "How refreshing," Lady Pemberton interjected from across the table. "So many marriages in our circle seem to be matters of convenience rather than affection. It's wonderful to see a couple who genuinely care for each other." Helena felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment, but also a pang of irony. If only Lady Pemberton knew how their marriage had actually begun. But perhaps that didn't matter now. What mattered was what they had become. As the evening progressed, Helena found herself relaxing and actually enjoying the social interaction. She had forgotten how stimulating it could be to engage with intelligent, well-informed people about topics of mutual interest. And she was gratified to notice how often Sebastian's eyes sought hers across the room, how he included her in conversations, how he seemed to take genuine pride in her contributions to the discussion. "You were wonderful tonight," Sebastian said, as their carriage carried them home through the lamplit streets of London. "Natural, charming, completely yourself. I was so proud to be your husband." "I was nervous at first," Helena admitted, "but then I realized that I had nothing to hide. We love each other. Why should I be ashamed of that?" "You shouldn't be," Sebastian agreed, taking her hand. "Our love is something to celebrate, not conceal." Over the following weeks, they attended a series of social events, dinner parties, musical evenings, garden parties, and smaller gatherings. Helena gradually grew more comfortable in her role as Sebastian's Duchess, and their obvious affection for each other became a subject of admiration rather than speculation. But it was at the grand ball hosted by the Earl and Countess of Pemberton in late July that Helena's newfound happiness faced its greatest test, the test of jealousy. The Pemberton Ball was one of the highlights of the London season, and Helena had spent considerable time preparing for what would be her most important social appearance as Sebastian's wife. She chose a gown of deep emerald silk that complemented her eyes and made her golden hair appear even more lustrous. The dress was cut in the latest fashion, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that moved gracefully as she walked. The Whitford emeralds, a magnificent set of necklace, earrings and bracelet that had belonged to Sebastian's mother, completed the ensemble. When she descended the stairs at their London townhouse, ready to depart for the ball, she found Sebastian waiting in the entrance hall. He was dressed in formal evening attire that emphasized his tall, powerful frame. and Helena felt a familiar flutter of attraction at the sight of him. "You look magnificent," he said, his eyes warm with admiration and love. "As do you," Helena replied, accepting his offered arm. "Shall we go dazzle society with our happiness?" "Lead the way, my love," Sebastian said, and Helena's heart soared at the endearment. Pemberton Hall was ablaze with lights when they arrived, and the sound of music and laughter drifted from the ballroom. As they were announced and made their entrance, Helena was acutely aware of the attention focused on them, but this time, instead of feeling exposed and vulnerable, she felt proud to be Sebastian's wife and partner. "The Duke and Duchess of Whitford," the majordomo announced, and conversation momentarily paused as the assembled guests turned to observe the couple who had been the subject of so much speculation since their marriage. Helena held her head high and smiled genuinely as they moved into the ballroom to greet their hosts and begin the evening's social obligations. She felt Sebastian's pride in her radiating from his every gesture, and it gave her confidence she had never possessed before. "Your Grace, how wonderful to see you," gushed Lady Pemberton, embracing Helena warmly. "You look absolutely radiant. Marriage clearly agrees with you." "Thank you, Lady Pemberton," Helena replied with a smile that was entirely genuine. "I'm very happy." It shows," Lady Pemberton said, glancing between Helena and Sebastian with obvious approval. "You both look like people very much in love." As they moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and making conversation, Helena felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what she had never dared to hope for, a marriage that was not only successful but genuinely joyful. It was then that she saw her. Lady Vivian Ashworth stood near the refreshment table, resplendent in a gown of midnight blue that emphasized her dark beauty. She was surrounded by a small court of admirers, but her eyes were fixed on Sebastian with an intensity that made Helena's stomach clench with sudden unease. Helena had heard of Lady Ashworth, of course, a widow of 28 who had been one of London's most celebrated beauties before her marriage to the elderly Lord Ashworth. His death 2 years previously had restored her to the marriage market with the added allure of independence and wealth. She was known for her sophisticated charm and her ability to attract the attention of the most eligible men in society. Helena watched with growing discomfort as Lady Ashworth excused herself from her companions and began moving purposefully in their direction. There was something predatory in her manner that set every one of Helena's instincts on high alert. "Sebastian," Lady Ashworth said warmly as she approached, her voice carrying clearly over the noise of the ballroom. "How wonderful to see you again. It's been far too long." "Vivian," Sebastian replied politely, though Helena noticed a certain stiffness in his manner. "I trust you're well." "Very well indeed," Lady Ashworth said, moving closer to Sebastian than strict propriety would dictate. Her hand came to rest on his arm, in a gesture that seemed casual, but struck Helena as inappropriately intimate. "Though I must say, married life seems to agree with you. You look more handsome than ever." Helena felt a sharp stab of something she had never experienced before, a hot, possessive anger that made her want to physically remove Lady Ashworth's hand from her husband's arm. The intensity of the emotion shocked her. "You're very kind," Sebastian said, glancing at Helena with an expression that seemed to be asking for rescue. "Vivian, I believe you know my wife, Helena." "Of course," Lady Ashworth said, turning to Helena with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your Grace, how lovely you look tonight. That shade of green is quite striking on you." "Thank you," Helena replied coolly, fighting to keep her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest. "I was just telling Sebastian how much I've missed our conversations," Lady Ashworth continued, her hand still resting on Sebastian's arm. "We used to have such stimulating discussions about literature and philosophy. Do you remember, Sebastian, that evening at the Carrington soiree when we debated the merits of Byron versus Wordsworth until nearly dawn?" Helena felt the blood drain from her face. The way Lady Ashworth spoke suggested an intimacy that went far beyond casual acquaintance. Had there been something between Sebastian and this woman before their marriage? The thought sent a wave of jealousy so intense it nearly took her breath away. "I'm afraid I don't recall the specific conversation," Sebastian said stiffly, finally stepping away from Lady Ashworth's touch. "If you'll excuse us, I believe the next dance is forming, and I'm promised to my wife." "Of course," Lady Ashworth said with a smile that seemed more triumphant than disappointed. "Perhaps we can continue our conversation later in the evening. I have so much I'd like to discuss with you." As Sebastian led Helena onto the dance floor, she struggled to compose herself. The jealousy that had struck her so suddenly was unlike anything she had ever experienced, a burning, possessive emotion that seemed to consume her from within. "Helena," Sebastian said quietly as they took their places for the country dance. "Are you well? You seem upset." "I'm fine," Helena said, though her voice sounded strained even to her own ears. "You're not fine," Sebastian said firmly. "What's wrong?" Helena looked up at him, this man she had come to love so completely, and felt the jealousy twist in her chest like a living thing. "That woman," she said quietly. "Lady Ashworth, what was she to you?" Sebastian's expression immediately became serious. "Nothing," he said firmly. "She was nothing to me, Helena. A casual acquaintance at best." "She spoke as if you were close," Helena said, hating the uncertainty in her own voice. "She may have wished for closeness that was never reciprocated," Sebastian said. "Helena, look at me." Helena met his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and love in their blue depths. "I have never had romantic feelings for Vivian Ashworth or any other woman," Sebastian said quietly but firmly. "You are the only woman I have ever loved, the only woman I want. Please don't let her poison what we have with lies and insinuations." Helena felt some of the tension leave her shoulders, but the jealousy still burned in her chest. "I've never felt anything like this before," she admitted. "This possessiveness, it frightened me." "It frightened you?" Sebastian asked, and Helena was surprised to see something that looked like hope in his expression. "Yes," Helena said. "The intensity of it, the way it made me want to claim you somehow, to make it clear to everyone that you belong to me." "Helena," Sebastian said softly, "do you know what that feeling means? That I'm becoming a jealous shrew?" Helena said with attempted lightness. "That you love me," Sebastian said, his voice warm with tenderness. "Completely, possessively the way I love you. Jealousy is the shadow side of love, my darling. The fact that you felt it so strongly means your heart is fully engaged." Helena stared at him, struck by the truth of his words. She had been so focused on the unpleasantness of the jealousy that she had missed its significance. She wouldn't have cared about Lady Ashworth's attention to Sebastian if she didn't love him completely. "I do love you," she said wonderingly. "So much that the thought of losing you to another woman was unbearable." "You will never lose me," Sebastian said firmly. "Not to Vivian Ashworth or anyone else. You have my heart completely, Helena. There is no room in it for anyone else." As they moved through the figures of the dance, Helena felt the last of her jealousy fade, replaced by a deep sense of security and joy. She had discovered something important about herself and about their love, that it was strong enough to survive challenges, deep enough to inspire fierce protectiveness, and secure enough to weather any storm. But their evening was far from over. As they left the dance floor, Helena noticed Lady Ashworth watching them with an expression of barely concealed frustration. It was clear that the woman had not given up her pursuit of Sebastian, and Helena realized that she would need to be prepared for further challenges to their happiness. "She's not going to give up easily, is she?" Helena observed quietly as they made their way to the refreshment table. "Probably not," Sebastian agreed. "But it doesn't matter what she does, Helena. Nothing she says or does can change what we have." "I know," Helena said, and she was surprised to realize that she meant it. The jealousy had been painful, but it had also been illuminating. She now understood the depth of her own feelings, and more importantly, she was secure in Sebastian's love for her. As if summoned by their conversation, Lady Ashworth appeared at Helena's side, her smile as predatory as ever. "Your Grace," she said sweetly, "I hope you don't mind my saying so, but you seem a bit pale this evening. Are you feeling quite well?" "I'm perfectly well, thank you," Helena replied coolly, drawing on reserves of aristocratic composure she hadn't known she possessed. "I'm so glad to hear it," Lady Ashworth said. "I would hate for you to miss any of the evening's festivities. There's to be a waltz later, and I was hoping Sebastian might honor me with a dance. For old time's sake, of course." Helena felt the jealousy flare again, but this time she was prepared for it. Instead of being overwhelmed by the emotion, she used it to fuel her determination to protect what was hers. "How thoughtful of you," Helena said with a smile that was all politeness and no warmth. "But I'm afraid Sebastian's evening is quite full. We've been apart so much recently with estate business that we're rather reluctant to spend time with anyone but each other." "How romantic," Lady Ashworth said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but. "Still, surely one dance would be one dance too many away from my wife," Sebastian interjected smoothly, moving to stand beside Helena in a gesture of unmistakable support. "I'm sure you understand, Vivian." When a man is deeply in love, he has little interest in other company. Lady Ashworth's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered her composure. "Of course," she said. "How foolish of me to suggest otherwise. Please, enjoy your evening together." As she walked away, Helena felt a surge of triumph. She had faced down her rival and emerged victorious, not through any dramatic confrontation, but through quiet confidence in her own worth and her husband's love. "Well done," Sebastian said quietly, his voice warm with admiration. "You handled that perfectly." "I'm learning," Helena said with a smile. "It helps to know that you're on my side." "Always," Sebastian said firmly. "In everything, always." The rest of the evening passed without incident, and Helena found herself actually enjoying the social interaction. She danced with Sebastian and several other gentlemen, engaged in stimulating conversation with various ladies, and generally conducted herself with the confidence and grace befitting a duchess. But the most important thing she had gained from the evening was a deeper understanding of her own feelings and her marriage. The jealousy had been painful, but it had also been revelatory. She loved Sebastian completely, possessively, and without reservation. And more importantly, she was secure in his love for her. As their carriage carried them home through the quiet streets of London, Helena reflected on how much she had changed since her wedding day. The frightened, resentful girl who had married Sebastian out of duty was gone, replaced by a confident woman who knew her own worth and the value of the love she had found. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, noting her contemplative expression. "About how different I am now," Helena said. "About how much we've both changed." "Do you regret any of it?" Sebastian asked. "Not a moment," Helena said firmly. "Even the difficult parts, even the jealousy tonight, it all led us to where we are now. And where we are now is exactly where I want to be." "With me?" Sebastian asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. "With you," Helena confirmed. "Always with you." The deeper understanding. The weeks following the Pemberton ball brought a new depth to Helena and Sebastian's relationship. The incident with Lady Ashworth had served as a catalyst, forcing them both to confront the true nature of their feelings and the strength of their bond. Helena found herself more confident in her role as Sebastian's wife, while Sebastian seemed to take even greater pleasure in their partnership. They attended several more social events during the remainder of the London season, and Helena noticed that she was no longer anxious about public scrutiny. She and Sebastian had nothing to hide. Their love was genuine and obvious to anyone who cared to observe them. They were frequently cited as an example of a truly happy marriage, and Helena took pride in the admiration their relationship inspired. "I received a letter from my sister Margaret today," Helena mentioned one morning as they shared breakfast in their London townhouse. "She's quite beside herself with excitement about her upcoming debut." "Your youngest sister, isn't she?" Sebastian asked, buttering a piece of toast with careful attention. "She must be 18 now?" 18 next month, Helena confirmed, pleased that he remembered details about her family. "She's convinced she'll take London by storm and marry a duke within her first season." "Ambitious," Sebastian said with amusement, "though I suppose one duke in the family might give her confidence." "I'm afraid I may have inadvertently contributed to her romantic notions," Helena admitted. "In my letters, I've perhaps painted our marriage in rather more glowing terms than were initially accurate." Sebastian set down his coffee cup and looked at her with interest. "And now, are those glowing terms more accurate?" Helena felt warmth rise in her cheeks, but she met his gaze steadily. "Much more accurate," she said softly. The smile that spread across Sebastian's face was radiant with happiness. "I'm very glad to hear that," he said. "Perhaps when your sister comes for her visit next month, she'll see that her romantic notions aren't entirely misplaced." "You don't mind her coming to stay?" Helena asked, touched by his consideration. "Helena," Sebastian said, reaching across the table to take her hand, "your family is my family now. I want them to feel welcome here always." It was gestures like this that continued to surprise and delight Helena. The man she had once thought cold and distant was revealing himself to be thoughtful, generous, and deeply caring. Every day brought new discoveries about his character, and every discovery made her love him more. Their physical relationship was also evolving, though Sebastian was careful to let Helena set the pace. Their kisses had grown more passionate, their embraces more lingering, and Helena found herself yearning for more intimate connection with her husband. One evening, as they sat together in the library of their London home, a smaller but no less elegant version of the library at Whitford Castle, Helena found herself studying Sebastian's profile as he read. The lamplight caught the strong line of his jaw and the dark waves of his hair, and she was struck by an almost overwhelming desire to touch him. "You're staring again," Sebastian said without looking up from his book, though she could see the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I'm admiring," Helena corrected, making no attempt to look away. Sebastian set down his book and turned to face her fully. "Admiring what, exactly?" "You," Helena said simply. "My husband. The man I was foolish enough to think I could resist loving." Sebastian's eyes darkened with an emotion that made Helena's pulse quicken. "Helena," he said, his voice rough with barely contained desire, "do you have any idea what you do to me when you say things like that?" "I hope I have some idea," Helena replied, moving closer to him on the sofa they shared. "Because you have a rather dramatic effect on me as well." Sebastian's hands came up to frame her face, his thumbs tracing the line of her cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "I love you so much it sometimes takes my breath away," he whispered. "Show me," Helena whispered back, and Sebastian needed no further encouragement. Their lovemaking that night was a revelation, tender and passionate, playful and profound. Helena discovered that the physical expression of their love was every bit as wonderful as the emotional connection they had built. In Sebastian's arms, she felt cherished and desired, beautiful and beloved. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the large bed in Sebastian's chambers, now their chambers, Helena marveled at how completely her life had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "About how wrong I was," Helena said, turning in his arms to face him. "About everything. About you. About us. About what marriage could be." "We were both wrong," Sebastian said, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I thought I was doomed to a loveless marriage with a woman who could barely tolerate my presence. Instead, I find myself married to my best friend, my greatest love, my perfect partner." "Your perfect partner?" Helena repeated, pleased by the description. "In every way," Sebastian confirmed. "You challenge my thinking. You make me laugh. You've brought warmth and joy to every corner of my life. You're everything I never knew I wanted in a wife." Helena felt tears of happiness prick at her eyes. "I love you so much, Sebastian. Sometimes I can hardly believe this is real." "It's real," Sebastian assured her, holding her close. "We're real. This love we've found, it's the most real thing in my life." As summer gave way to autumn, Helena and Sebastian's happiness seemed to grow with each passing day. They had settled into a comfortable routine that balanced their individual interests with their shared activities, and Helena had begun to take a more active role in the management of their London social obligations as well as their estate responsibilities. Mrs. Hartwell mentioned in her letter that the harvest at Whitford has been exceptional this year, Helena said one morning as she and Sebastian reviewed their correspondence. "The tenants are quite pleased with the results of the new agricultural techniques you implemented." "Our techniques," Sebastian corrected gently. "Many of the most successful innovations were your suggestions, Helena. The crop rotation schedule, the improved drainage systems, the new storage methods, all of those came from your research and observations." Helena glowed under his praise. "I enjoy the work," she said. "There's something deeply satisfying about seeing tangible improvements in people's lives." "You have a gift for it," Sebastian said. "The tenants have mentioned to me how much they appreciate your involvement in estate matters. They see you as a true partner in the enterprise, not just a decorative duchess." "Is that how you see me?" Helena asked, though she was fairly certain of the answer. "I see you as my equal in all things," Sebastian said firmly. "My partner, my advisor, my closest friend, and the love of my life. You're not just the Duchess of Whitford. You're Helena, the woman who makes everything in my life better simply by being part of it." It was declarations like this that made Helena realize how completely her understanding of marriage had been transformed. She had begun their union expecting nothing more than polite coexistence, but she had found instead a partnership that enriched every aspect of her life. Their happiness, however, was not without its challenges. In September, they received disturbing news from Whitford Castle that would test their relationship in ways they had never anticipated. "There's been an outbreak of fever in the village," Sebastian said grimly as he read the urgent letter from their estate manager. "Several families are affected, and Dr. Morrison is requesting additional medical supplies and assistance." "We must return immediately," Helena said without hesitation. "Our people need us." Sebastian looked at her with surprise and admiration. "Helena, it could be dangerous. We don't know how serious this outbreak is, or how contagious the fever might be. All the more reason for us to be there, Helena said firmly. These people depend on us, Sebastian. We can't abandon them in their time of need simply because there might be some risk to ourselves. You're remarkable, Sebastian said, his voice warm with love and pride. Most women of your station would insist on staying safely in London until the danger passed. I'm not most women, Helena said with a smile. I'm your wife, and these are our people. Our responsibility doesn't end when things become difficult. They departed for Derbyshire that very afternoon, travelling as quickly as safety would allow. Helena spent the journey making lists of supplies they would need and planning how best to organise relief efforts for the affected families. When they arrived at Whitford Castle, they found the situation more serious than they had initially understood. The fever had spread to nearly a dozen families, and 2 elderly residents had already died. Dr. Morrison, the local physician, was overwhelmed and desperately in need of assistance. Your Grace, thank God you've come, Dr. Morrison said, when they met with him immediately upon their arrival. I've done what I can, but I'm only one man, and the illness is spreading faster than I can treat it. What do you need from us? Helena asked immediately. Additional medical supplies, certainly, Dr. E. Morrison replied. But more than that, we need people willing to help care for the sick. Many families are afraid to assist their neighbours for fear of contracting the illness themselves. Then we'll help, Helena said without hesitation. Tell us what needs to be done. Sebastian looked at her with a mixture of admiration and concern. Helena, are you certain? The risk is one we share with our people, Helena interrupted gently but firmly. We're in this together, Sebastian. All of us. Over the following weeks, Helena threw herself into the relief efforts with a dedication that amazed everyone who witnessed it. She organized the delivery of food and medical supplies to affected families, coordinated care for children whose parents were ill, and even assisted Dr. Morrison directly in treating the sick. Sebastian worked alongside her, using his authority and resources to ensure that everything needed was provided quickly and efficiently. Together, they transformed the crisis response from a chaotic struggle into an organized, effective effort that undoubtedly saved lives. I've never seen anything like it, Mrs. Hartwell confided to Dr. Morrison one evening as they watched Helena emerge from yet another cottage where she had been tending to a sick family. Her Grace has been working from dawn to dusk, never thinking of herself, only of what others need. And His Grace is no different, Dr. Morrison replied. They're a remarkable couple. The tenants would follow them anywhere after this. Helena was exhausted by the constant demands of the crisis, but she had never felt more fulfilled. This was what she had been meant to do, to use her position and resources to make a real difference in people's lives, and having Sebastian beside her, sharing the work and the risks, made everything feel possible. Are you sorry we came back? Sebastian asked one evening as they sat together in their private sitting room, both too tired to do anything but hold each other. Not for a moment, Helena said firmly. This is where we belong, Sebastian, with our people, sharing their struggles and their triumphs. Even though it's dangerous? Even though we could both become ill? Sebastian asked. Especially because of that, Helena said. Anyone can be a leader when times are easy. It's in moments like this that true leadership is tested. Sebastian pulled her closer, marveling at the woman he had married. I love you, he said simply, not just for your beauty or your intelligence, but for your courage, your compassion, your absolute refusal to put your own comfort above the welfare of others. I love you for the same reasons, Helena replied. You could have sent money and supplies and stayed safely in London. Instead, you're here, working alongside me, sharing every risk and every burden. Where else would I be? Sebastian asked. You're my partner in all things, Helena. That doesn't change when things become difficult. It becomes more important than ever. The fever outbreak finally began to subside in early October, thanks largely to the coordinated relief efforts that Helena and Sebastian had organized. No additional lives were lost after their arrival, and the affected families made full recoveries. The gratitude of their tenants was overwhelming and deeply moving. We'll never forget what you did for us, Your Grace, said Mrs. Thompson, whose entire family had been stricken with the fever. You and His Grace risked your own lives to save ours. That's not something we'll ever take for granted. We're all part of the same community, Helena replied. We take care of each other. That's what communities do. As life gradually returned to normal at Whitford Castle, Helena and Sebastian found that their relationship had been strengthened rather than strained by the crisis they had faced together. They had seen each other at their most exhausted, most stressed, and most vulnerable, and their love had only grown deeper. "I think we make a good team," Sebastian observed one evening as they walked through the village, checking on families who were still recovering. "The best team," Helena agreed. "I can't imagine facing something like this with anyone else." "You won't have to," Sebastian said, taking her hand. "Whatever challenges we face in the future, we'll face them together." "Promise?" Helena asked, though she already knew the answer. "Promise," Sebastian confirmed, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. As they walked back toward the castle in the gathering dusk, Helena reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. She had begun as a reluctant bride, convinced that she could never love the man she had been forced to marry. Now she couldn't imagine her life without him. The crisis had revealed something important about both of them, that their love was not just a private happiness, but a source of strength that enabled them to serve others. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts, capable of facing any challenge and overcoming any obstacle. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, noting her contemplative expression. "About how grateful I am," Helena said. "For you, for us, for the life we've built together, even for the challenges we've faced, because they've shown me what we're capable of when we work together." "We're capable of anything," Sebastian said with quiet confidence. "As long as we have each other, there's nothing we can't overcome." Helena squeezed his hand, knowing that he was right. Their love had been tested by doubt, by jealousy, by crisis, and by the demands of leadership, and it had emerged stronger each time. Whatever the future might bring, they would face it together, as partners in every sense of the word. When Helena and Sebastian returned to London in November, they found that news of their heroic efforts during the fever outbreak had preceded them. Society was abuzz with tales of the Duke and Duchess who had risked their own lives to save their tenants, and their reputation had been transformed from that of a convenient marriage to one of the most admired couples in England. "Your Grace," Lady Pemberton gushed when they encountered her at their first social event upon their return, "we've heard the most extraordinary stories about your courage during the crisis at Whitford. Is it true that you personally nursed sick families back to health?" "We did what anyone would do in such circumstances," Helena replied modestly. "Our people needed help, and we were able to provide it." "Not anyone would do such a thing," Lady Pemberton insisted. "Most people of our station would have sent money and stayed safely away. What you did was truly heroic." Helena felt uncomfortable with the praise, but Sebastian squeezed her hand encouragingly. "My wife has always had a remarkable capacity for compassion," he said proudly. "I'm honored to be her partner in all things." The admiration they received was gratifying, but more importantly, the crisis had cemented their partnership in ways that went far beyond their personal relationship. They had proven to themselves and to others that their marriage was built on something much stronger than convenience or even love. It was built on shared values and mutual respect that enabled them to face any challenge together. "I've been thinking," Helena said one evening as they sat together in their London drawing room, "about establishing a permanent fund for medical emergencies on the estate, something that would ensure we're always prepared for situations like the one we just faced." "Excellent idea," Sebastian said immediately. "What did you have in mind?" "A portion of the estate's annual income could be set aside specifically for medical supplies, emergency food stores, and perhaps even training for additional medical personnel," Helena explained. "That way, we wouldn't have to scramble to organize relief efforts if something like this happens again." "You're brilliant," Sebastian said, his voice warm with admiration. "I'll have our solicitors draw up the necessary documents immediately." It was conversations like this that reinforced Helena's growing confidence in her role as Sebastian's partner. He never dismissed her ideas or treated her suggestions as less important than his own. Instead, he encouraged her initiatives and supported her vision for their shared responsibilities. As winter settled over London, they established a new routine that balanced their social obligations with their growing involvement in various charitable causes. Helena had discovered a passion for social reform that complemented Sebastian's existing commitments to agricultural innovation and tenant welfare. "I've been corresponding with several ladies who are working to improve conditions in the industrial cities," Helena mentioned one morning over breakfast. "They've invited me to join their committee for establishing schools for working children." "I think that's wonderful," Sebastian said. "Your insights would be valuable to such an organization." "You don't mind the time it would require?" Helena asked. "I know we have many social obligations." "Helena," Sebastian said, setting down his newspaper and looking at her seriously, "I married a woman of intelligence and compassion, not a decorative ornament, I want you to pursue whatever causes matter to you. Our social obligations are far less important than the opportunity to make a real difference in the world." Helena felt a surge of love for this man who not only supported her ambitions, but actively encouraged them. "I love you," she said simply. "And I love you," Sebastian replied. "More every day." The final challenge. Their happiness faced one last significant test in December, when Lady Ashworth made a final desperate attempt to create discord between them. The occasion was a Christmas ball hosted by the Duke of Marlborough, and Lady Ashworth had apparently decided that this would be her last opportunity to pursue Sebastian. Helena noticed her immediately upon their arrival. She was impossible to miss in a gown of scarlet silk that was cut daringly low and designed to attract maximum attention. But Helena no longer felt the sharp stab of jealousy that had once overwhelmed her. Instead, she felt only pity for a woman so desperate for attention that she would pursue a happily married man. "She's here," Helena observed quietly to Sebastian as they made their way through the receiving line. "I see her," Sebastian replied. "Are you concerned?" "Not in the least," Helena said with complete honesty. "Should I be?" "Never," Sebastian said firmly. "You have nothing to fear from Vivian Ashworth or anyone else." Lady Ashworth made her move during the supper interval, approaching Sebastian when Helena was momentarily engaged in conversation with several other ladies. But Helena was watching, and she saw the entire exchange unfold. "Sebastian," Lady Ashworth said, moving close enough that her voice would not carry to others, "I must speak with you privately. It's a matter of some urgency." "I'm afraid that's not possible, Vivian," Sebastian said politely but firmly. "Whatever you wish to discuss can be said here in public." "It's about your wife," Lady Ashworth said, her voice taking on a tone of false concern. "There are things you should know about her behavior during your absence from London. Things that would shock you if you knew the truth." Helena felt a moment of anger at the woman's audacity, but she was curious to see how Sebastian would respond to such an obvious attempt at manipulation. "I'm not interested in gossip or innuendo," Sebastian said coldly. "My wife's character is beyond reproach, and I won't listen to suggestions otherwise." "But Sebastian," Lady Ashworth persisted, "surely you want to know if she's been faithful to you? If she's worthy of the devotion you show her?" "I know my wife," Sebastian said, his voice carrying a note of steel that made several nearby conversations pause. "I know her character, her integrity, and her heart. Nothing you could say would change my opinion of her, because my opinion is based on knowledge, not speculation." Helena felt tears prick at her eyes, not of hurt, but of overwhelming love for this man who defended her so completely and without hesitation. "You're making a mistake," Lady Ashworth said, her composure finally beginning to crack. "She doesn't love you the way I do. She married you for your title and fortune, nothing more." "You're wrong," Sebastian said quietly. "She married me because she had no choice, but she loves me because she chose to, and that makes her love infinitely more valuable than anything you could offer." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lady Ashworth standing alone with her failed schemes. Helena felt a surge of pride in her husband's handling of the situation, and when he reached her side, she took his arm with complete confidence. "Well done," she said quietly. "She won't trouble us again," Sebastian said with certainty, and indeed, Lady Ashworth left the ball shortly afterward, and they never saw her again in London society. Helena later learned that she had accepted an offer of marriage from an elderly widower and had retired to his estate in Scotland, apparently having finally accepted that Sebastian was beyond her reach. "I'm almost sorry for her," Helena confessed to Sebastian as they discussed the incident later that evening. "Sorry for her?" Sebastian asked with surprise. "She spent so much time pursuing something she could never have that she missed the opportunity to find real happiness with someone else," Helena explained. "It's rather tragic when you think about it." "You're extraordinarily generous," Sebastian said, pulling her into his arms. "Most women would be less charitable towards someone who tried to destroy their marriage. Our marriage is too strong to be destroyed by someone like her," Helena said with confidence. "Besides, in a strange way, I'm almost grateful to her." "Grateful?" Sebastian asked, clearly puzzled. "If she hadn't made me jealous at the Pemberton ball, I might never have realized how much I loved you," Helena explained. "Her interference forced me to confront my own feelings, and that led to everything wonderful that followed." "In that case," Sebastian said with a smile, "perhaps I should thank her." "I don't think that will be necessary," Helena said with a laugh. "I think we can manage our gratitude from a distance." The perfect happiness. As 1823 drew to a close, Helena and Sebastian had achieved something that had once seemed impossible, a marriage that was not only successful, but genuinely joyful. They had proven that love could indeed grow from the most unlikely beginnings, that arranged marriages could become love matches, and that the greatest happiness often came from the most unexpected sources. Their relationship had been tested by doubt, jealousy, crisis, and external interference, and it had emerged stronger each time. They had learned to trust each other completely, to support each other's dreams, and to face challenges as true partners. "I have something to tell you," Helena said one snowy evening in December as they sat before the fire in their private sitting room. "Oh," Sebastian said, looking up from the book he was reading. "I'm with child," Helena announced, her voice soft with wonder and joy. Sebastian's book fell forgotten to the floor as he stared at her with amazement. "Truly?" he asked. "Truly," Helena confirmed. "Dr. Morrison confirmed it when we were at Whitford last week. I wanted to be certain before I told you." Sebastian crossed to her in 3 quick strides and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around the room despite her laughing protests. "I love you," he said, setting her down gently and framing her face with his hands. "I love you so much, and I love our child already." "I love you too," Helena said, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. "I can hardly believe how blessed we are." "Our child will grow up knowing they are loved," Sebastian said, his hand coming to rest protectively over her still flat stomach. "They'll see what a true partnership looks like, what real love can accomplish. They'll never doubt that their parents chose each other," Helena added, "even if that choice came after the wedding rather than before." As they held each other in the firelight, both were thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment of perfect happiness. They had begun as strangers bound by duty, but they had chosen to become lovers, partners, and now parents. Their love story might have had an unconventional beginning, but it had led them to a happiness neither had dared to dream of. The legacy of love. 5 years later, Helena stood in the nursery at Whitford Castle, watching as their 3-year-old son, James, played with wooden soldiers while their infant daughter, Catherine, slept peacefully in her cradle. Sebastian was away in London on parliamentary business, but he would return that evening, and Helena knew he would want to hear every detail of his children's day. Their marriage had only grown stronger with time, weathering the challenges of parenthood, estate management, and their increasing involvement in social reform with the same partnership and love that had carried them through their early difficulties. Helena often thought about the woman she had been on her wedding day, angry, frightened, convinced that she was doomed to a loveless marriage. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone she could barely recognize in the confident, beloved wife and mother she had become. "Mama, look," James called, running toward her with a toy horse clutched in his small fist. "Papa gave me this before he left." "It's beautiful, darling," Helena said, accepting the toy with genuine delight. "Papa will want to hear all about how you've been playing with it when he comes home." "When is Papa coming home?" James asked, as he did every day when Sebastian was away. "Soon," Helena promised, "and he'll want to hear all about your adventures." As if summoned by their conversation, the sound of hoofbeats on the drive announced Sebastian's early return. James shrieked with excitement and ran toward the stairs, while Helena followed more sedately, carrying Catherine and feeling her heart lift at the prospect of her husband's return. Sebastian appeared in the entrance hall still in his traveling clothes and swept James up in his arms before moving to embrace Helena and kiss both her and the baby. "I missed you," he said against her lips, the simple words carrying all the love and devotion of their years together. "And we missed you," Helena replied, feeling the familiar warmth that always filled her when her family was complete. As they walked toward the drawing room together, Sebastian carrying James while Helena held Catherine, Helena reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment of perfect happiness. They had proven that love could indeed grow from the most unlikely beginnings, that arranged marriages could become love matches, and that sometimes the greatest gifts came disguised as unwanted obligations. Their children would grow up knowing they were loved, seeing daily examples of what true partnership looked like, and understanding that the best things in life were worth waiting for and working toward. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, noting her contemplative expression. "About how wrong I was," Helena said with a smile. "About everything. About you, about us, about what marriage could be." "We were both wrong," Sebastian said, shifting James to one arm so he could take Helena's free hand. "But we were also both right in the end. We found exactly what we needed in each other. Even if we didn't know we needed it at the time, Helena added. Especially because we didn't know, Sebastian said. The best surprises are the ones we never see coming. As they entered their home together, Helena felt a deep sense of gratitude for the unexpected path that had led her to this life. She had despised the Duke she had been forced to marry, but in learning to love him, she had discovered not only happiness but her own capacity for deep, transformative love. Their story would be told for generations, a tale of how two people who began as strangers became soulmates, how duty became devotion, and how a marriage of convenience became the greatest love affair of their time. It was proof that love could bloom in the most unlikely circumstances, and that sometimes the things we resist most strongly are exactly what we need most desperately. Years later, when their children asked about how their parents had fallen in love, Helena and Sebastian would tell them the truth, that love doesn't always arrive when we expect it or in the form we anticipate, but when it does come, it has the power to transform everything. They would explain that the strongest marriages are built not on passion alone, but on respect, partnership, and the daily choice to love and support each other through every challenge and triumph. Their love had been tested by jealousy, crisis, and the demands of leadership, and it had emerged stronger each time. They had learned that true love is not just a feeling, but a commitment, a promise to choose each other every day, to support each other's dreams, and to face whatever challenges life might bring as true partners. As Helena tucked James into his bed that night, and Sebastian settled Catherine in her cradle, they both reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment of perfect contentment. They had found in each other not just love, but purpose, partnership, and the deep satisfaction that comes from building something meaningful together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had never married?" Helena asked as they prepared for bed. "Never," Sebastian said firmly, "because I can't imagine any other life but this one. You are my destiny, Helena, just as I am yours. However we came together, we were meant to be together." "I love you," Helena said, the words as meaningful now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "And I love you," Sebastian replied, holding her close. "My beautiful, brilliant, beloved wife, my perfect partner in all things." As they fell asleep in each other's arms, both were secure in the knowledge that their love would endure whatever challenges the future might bring. They had built something rare and precious, a marriage based on genuine partnership, mutual respect, and a love that had grown stronger with every passing day. Their story was proof that the best love stories are not always the ones that begin with passion, but the ones that grow into it. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unlikely packages, and sometimes the love we resist is exactly the love we need. The story of Duke Sebastian and Lady Helena proves that love can bloom in the most unexpected circumstances when we have the courage to be vulnerable. Their journey shows us that sometimes what we think we want and what we actually need are very different things. Helena's jealousy became the key that unlocked her heart, revealing that true love had been growing silently all along. Their marriage teaches us that the strongest foundations are built not on passion alone, but on respect, understanding, and the willingness to choose each other every single day. They discovered that love is not just a feeling, but a commitment, a promise to support each other's dreams, to face challenges as true partners, and to build something meaningful together. May their story inspire us to remain open to love's possibilities, even when they come disguised as duty or obligation. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unlikely packages, and the love we resist might be exactly the love we need. True happiness often lies not in getting what we want, but in learning to love what we have been given. Subscribe for more enchanting historical romances. Hit like if Helena and Sebastian's journey touched your heart. Comment below. What did you think of their transformation from hatred to passionate love? Your next favorite romance is just one click away.